Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
Before I was elected as vice president, before I was elected as United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
So that was Vice President Kamala Harris out on the campaign trail, sounding fantastic. We are going to talk about all of that in just a moment. We have John Heilemann today. Very excited about that. First-time guest. We're going to get to John in a second, but first, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So here's some feedback we received this week. We got a lot of correspondence on our conversation with original Beatles drummer Pete Best. My old pal Jessica Fell writes, what a great person to interview. I've heard clips of him being interviewed on this subject in the past. He had to have had perseverance to survive this. I guess fate played a hand. It certainly did. Robin Eileen Bernstein writes, as a drummer, I definitely want to listen to this one. Susan Pallets writes, wow, I'm so excited. Love the Beatles. Marcella writes, what a great interview. And oh my God, so excited for you. You did a great job keeping your cool. Marcella, I didn't. I give all the credit to the diaper I was wearing. And Michael Fernano writes, no Ringo, no Beatles. Same with the Who. No Keith, no Who. Ah, come on. Come on. I love Ringo. My dog's name is Ringo. But without Pete Best, there was no first album, in my opinion. So got to give the man the credit that he deserves. And don't forget, stick around to the end for another episode of Just Jeff. Well, before we begin today, I would just like to lead the congregation in the back room to a little Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya, oh Lord, Kumbaya. That's my outro. Oh. And we have harmony once again, not just in America, but more importantly, in the back room. We are unified. We are together. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love. And that's what it's like now in the Democratic Party. We're all coming together. We're all trying to love one another. And it's kind of great.
I don't think we're trying.
We're not.
I think we genuinely are.
We're euphoric, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
This euphoria. Think about where we were last week. On the ledge. Panic, despair, depression, frustration.
Curled up in a fetal position in bed.
Speak for yourself. Some of us were, still in kind of Camp Biden, and other people were not in Camp Biden. There was 3 weeks of fighting, and it got ugly, and it was cannibalistic, and, of course, Maddie was all wrong. And but now here we are. It's a new day, a week later, and I am very happy to say that I was wrong. That my worst fears of chaos that would ensue if Joe Biden were to step down never materialized. Yeah, it was actually a pretty seamless, flawless kind of transition to Kamala Harris, vice president. For those of you out there who think she's a DEI hire, let me say once again, vice president, former U.S. Senator, former California Attorney General, former San Francisco District Attorney Kamala Harris. Is just off and running. It's kind of really inspirational to watch.
Yes, I couldn't be more excited. In fact, I was texting with a woman yesterday evening who's a big donor and she was on a call with 150,000 other women. They raised $1 million in 30 minutes. And this has been a repeat of what happened last week with 44,000 Black women. And they're going to try and do this again, possibly every Sunday. The whole event, I was trying to think of an analogy for what happened. And I actually had to go back to 1984, the Ridley Scott commercial that introduced the Apple Macintosh, where you had this industrial gray tone setting of all of these people looking at Big Brother. And then you had this heroine come in with a sledgehammer and smash the screen. And that is a metaphor for what we're seeing right now. And I'm ecstatic, obviously. There's a lot of work to come, but we are on the right path, and enthusiasm is off the charts in every measurement that you can make, from volunteerism, from fundraising, from youth. The youth coming out and registering, under 700% increase in registering. It's, it's as good as we could have hoped given where we were a couple of weeks ago.
I'd like to hop on, and women are carrying this, but right after the 44,000 women fundraised, 30,000 African-American/Black men raised over $1 million as well.
Yeah, it's intoxicating, and I think there's a really tough road ahead. But I am very happy right now. I'm very happy. She's transcending the moment in a way. It's like the timing is right. I feel something in my gut that I like to feel, that this is a critical moment in our history as a nation. And she's perhaps the right person at the right time.
And that's really well said. And it made me really excited and happy, and for the first time actually hopeful, when my younger son, who's 22, who he would have voted for Biden, but he wasn't happy about it. He just wasn't interested, and he's not a political creature. But now he's really energized. He's following the polls. He's on Twitter. He's all in, and that's kind of what I was hoping for.
I mean, one of the first polls that has come out, it's an Axios poll, and it shows that Harris has like a 20-point margin with 18 to 34. And Biden had been down to like 6 points. So she's getting those numbers back, at least at this point, to where they were for Biden in 2020.
People still need to get out and vote, right?
Yeah.
You can be enthusiastic, but are you going to go to the polls? Yeah. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the enthusiasm in terms of getting out the vote is obviously one of the most important things you can have. And this is what we have to do. We have to think different. And that's why we were able to come together. And thank goodness we were, because obviously everyone was afraid when this happened that there'd be some crazy convention thing and everybody be going crazy wanting to get a nomination. But it didn't happen. Coalescing around Kamala is really quite astounding from a historical perspective.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, and that's the inspiring part, is to see like, okay, maybe Democrats do have their shit together. They got their eye on the prize, and there's going to be no fucking around here. Like, it's just, the stakes are too high. And so, but there's a lot of road ahead, and the euphoria has to really evolve into a much greater campaign that has real depth, real resonance, widespread appeal to all the groups in the coalition, and ultimately November 5th, And so anything can and will happen, as we've learned. We just look at the last 7 weeks, what's happened. It's insane from a historical standpoint. And, Republicans are shell-shocked. They did not expect, their game plan was, let's run against the old guy, who they claim can't get a coherent sentence out. Now they're running against a woman who's 20 years younger than he is, and a former attorney general. She's really great litigating cases and making closing statements. And instead of a depressed party, they're dealing with a euphoric party. So everything has flipped, everything. And so he's now the bumbling old guy, who still talks about Hannibal Lecter. So the contrast now couldn't be greater. And so this, to me, is Democrats' election to lose.
And to underscore that, whoever is listening, and if you have Instagram, there's a reel going around, or you can YouTube this, of how she questioned Kavanaugh at his confirmation hearings. And there's like 19 seconds.
Oh, I remember that.
And all you have to do, if you're feeling low and you're feeling a little, uncomfortable, watch that. And you will be like, yes, we are going to win.
Yeah, it's hard not to feel that way. She just got the much anticipated endorsement of not just Barack Obama, but Michelle Obama. They were both on a call to her. And I think that's going to be a really interesting change in terms of this election versus the prior, because Michelle typically didn't get her hands too dirty in politics. And she's made a very bold public statement that I am going to be involved in this campaign. And people love them some Michelle Obama. And if she's out there campaigning, like, this could be the election where we see numbers we've never seen before. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My huge losers: asinine elected Republican responses to Kamala Harris as the new Dem presidential nominee, such as calling Harris a DEI pick, asking for proof of life of Joe Biden, and urging the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment. My winner: Joe Biden, for both displaying service to his country over his own needs again, and by selecting his successor, he was able to steer the Democratic Party towards unity.
My winner is, of course, Kamala Harris, because we just learned that Hello Kitty is actually a woman, and it's obvious we can have a woman president now. My loser is Congress, the House and the Senate, for inviting a criminal, Netanyahu, to speak before a joint session and really demean Congress.
My winners: Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, for showing us what class, grace, patriotism is, and what it means to be great human beings. My loser is the opposite of what I just said: Donald Trump. Need I say more? Which gets us to the weekly rant. So, what a difference a week makes, right? Just a few days ago, Democrats were on the ledge, drowning in panic and despair. It was nothing but gloom and doom. President Joe Biden was going to hand the election to Donald Trump, who was going to then destroy democracy. The prior 3 weeks were filled with intense infighting among Democrats, those who wanted Biden to stay and finish the course and win another term and save the world from Dr. Evil, versus those who felt Biden was too old, too weak, too slow, and poised to hand another victory to Trump. The pressure campaign among the party elites and the nonstop, incredibly one-sided, imbalanced coverage among the media finally worked. Biden made what I'm sure was an incredibly emotional, painful, and perhaps even regrettable decision to quit the race. Everyone wondered, would the party then devolve into chaos, with several rapacious candidates throwing their hats into the ring, and thus sending the campaign and the upcoming Democratic convention in Chicago into a tailspin? I was one of those people concerned that the party would self-destruct with just 3 months left until the election, and I'm thrilled to say that I was wrong. It is both impressive and inspiring how swiftly Kamala Harris has coalesced support from voters and donors. True, it's only been less than a week, but she's off to a flawless start, and the energy and excitement is palpable. It's what Democrats so desperately craved and needed, and it has completely flipped this election on its head. Democrats are now the party of the younger, vibrant, aggressive, galvanizing woman of color, and Republicans have been left stunned and without a real plan to defend against the obvious negative narrative of now being led by an old, corrupt, incompetent, dangerous candidate at the top of their ticket. As Jen, I'm always in a good mood, likes to say, I am optimistic, Andy. And that's what I'm going to remain, as I like what I'm seeing. And I personally am going to do everything humanly possible to propel that energy and excitement forward. But even more importantly, to support Kamala Harris, help get out the vote, and help her become not only America's first woman president, but its first woman of color president. And I urge everyone else to join this party as well. All right, it's time for John Heilemann. He is a partner, chief political columnist, and host of the twice-weekly podcast Impolitic with John Heilemann at Puck, as well as national affairs analyst at NBC News and MSNBC. John was also co-creator and co-host of Showtime's The Circus. He is also the author of the New York Times best-selling books Pride Before the Fall, Double Down, and Game Change, the latter of which was adapted into an HBO feature film that won 5 Emmy Awards, 3 Golden Globes, and a Peabody Award. He's previously been co-founder and executive editor of The Recount, co-host of MSNBC and Bloomberg TV's With All Due Respect, managing editor of Bloomberg Politics, and was a staff writer for New York, The New Yorker, Wired, and The Economist. John, welcome into the back room.
Is this the back room? Like, is this where it's like, there's like song like Brownsville Station, Smoking in the Boys Room. I'm like dating myself here. I always feel like the back room is this where like all like the bad behavior takes place.
Yeah.
Teacher, don't you fill me up with your rules? Because everybody knows that smoking ain't allowed in school.
That's impressive.
I did a lot of smoking in school, I'll tell you, back in the day. I went to Catholic school and I would ride my bike to school, and my friend Paul and I used to ride the bike to school, and he had one of the handlebar grips. He could unscrew that and turn it into a little tiny bong. So we would like take bong hits before we went to, this like 8th grade.
That's very Bondish, James Bond.
Yeah, it was cool. It was very a little kind of MacGyver meets Bond, meets James Bond meets Jeff Spicoli.
That sounds more like MacGruber.
That's my misspent youth. Although, good to see you, man. How's it going?
Great. And I got to say, I was such a huge fan of the Circus. I've had all your compadres on, McKinnon and Miller and Jen.
They're all great Americans.
They are great Americans, and I was so sad to see that show go. I asked Mark if it's ever coming back. I'll ask you the same thing. Like, is it ever going to come back somehow, somewhere?
Honest to God, the deal is, we said publicly and really meant, it was a weird anomaly, the show, in a sense, because we came in, in December of 2015, basically at the era of like peak TV, where everybody, there were a bunch of people who wanted to make the show with us. It was like, there were a lot of, it was an experiment, and we were going to do it for 1 year, and then Trump got elected, and it seemed like, okay, the circus goes on. And Showtime was so great with us for so long. I don't know that nobody thought at the beginning that we were going to do as many years as we did. And I'll say personally, from my standpoint, this is a longer answer than you might have been looking for, but like, I just wanted to do one more year. Like the show's really hard to make, and it's an exhausting thing. I think a lot of us feel like it's the hardest thing we ever did, and also the thing we're most proud of. And I was just like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It was gonna kill me. But I really wanted one more year, and I wanted the year because we're a campaign show. This was going to be a super important campaign, and I felt like, as a narrative journalist type of person, I kind of wanted an end to the story.
Sure.
Like we covered the Trump era, and I thought, we'll get to November, either Trump will be over, or the country will be over. Mm-hmm. But either way, the story will be over.
Right.
And so leaving when we did was really painful, and it remains even more painful now. I would say that, like, through the primaries this year, I was not like, oh my God, I missed the circus. It was like, I was out in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, and there was nothing to cover. They were both, the Republican primary was a fake primary. The Democratic primary was pro forma primary. I didn't sit there and think, man, I really wish we were making this show right now. But for the last month, since the debate to now, it's killing me not to be making the show. And we've all been subject to, lovely, but hundreds of, I would say mine are now in the thousands of people who've said to me either in social media or in person how much they missed the show and how much they wanted to come back. The world is, Andy, this is something I don't think I have said publicly, but it's just true. The world of streaming media now, after the world of peak TV, when everything corrected, and it's very hard right now for people to sell anything in the world. There's unscripted shows that are getting sold, but not very many. It's very, very tight. And all of the companies that have money, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, broadly speaking, are really allergic to topical political content for a variety of reasons that we could go on to offline. But like, they all have various reasons why they're not against political things, as long as they're historical. And some of it just has to do with Trump's toxicity. It's like we learned this when I was running the Recount. We did 1 billion video streams on Twitter in the year 2020, and nobody wanted to advertise next to that content because that Trump was so polarizing. Mm-hmm. That like Trump on just even like clips from the press conferences were so really polarizing. So you've got these companies that have money are like very like, we don't want to have anything to do with politics. Go and look at those platforms, Amazon, Apple, Netflix. Just look for topical political content, current political content, in which like you might see Donald Trump's face on screen. I defy you to find anything like that on those platforms. And then the rest of the industry is in some state of economic duress, where like the consolidation of the business means like no one knows, is Paramount going to survive? Is Warner Brothers Discovery, is that like they're all tight on money. The ones who would be interested maybe in doing the show are very economically strapped, and the ones who have a ton of money are really allergic to this kind of content. So we found ourselves, I would have said if the show had ended 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we would have had multiple platforms that would have wanted to pick it up. The combination of the nature of the structural change that's happening in the business and the timing of when we went off the air left us in a place where, we have talked to everybody about bringing the show back in some form or fashion. I have not given up that ghost. Mm-hmm. And so the long answer to your short question, I'd love to get the show back on the air. All of us would love to do it. We'd go back and do a 2-hour election special that would come out the weekend after the election, a circus on the Sunday before and the Sunday after at like kind of oversized. We'd bring the show back in its normal form. If we could find someone, it's not a cheap show to make. So, this is not like cable content where you bring a bunch of people in and you run the cameras and you set a bunch of people in front of cameras and talk to camera. Like sending 5, 6, 7 crews out in the field to shoot all week long. If you know anything about this business, not cheap, but everyone is like, we'll work at scale, we do it for a discount. We're really passionate about the show. So if anybody's out there listening and has some idea for how to get the thing on the air, we're open to all ideas, and we've been out trying to find someone who would take it back on. I think the audience would be there for it. I'm not like, that was never the problem with the show. It wasn't like Paramount decided to drop the show because our numbers were down. Our numbers had been solid and great for basically the whole life of the show. It just is there, it's a weird combination of factors. So, hey, if you know anybody who's got some dough and a platform to put us on, send them my way. We're happy to have a conversation. We'd love to be back on the air.
Yeah, it's the same for me as like when Jon Stewart left. I was like, now you're leaving? Like this seems, to the point you made, like what a year this would have been for the show, primaries aside.
The general election would have been great. Yeah, it would have been great to be doing it now. Even before we knew what was going to happen in this month, and it's obviously no one would, hope for events like a catastrophic debate and an assassination attempt, like, but in terms of news, those are, our show was like built for things like big things that change fast, and we're out there in the world covering it in a different way. So anyway, it would have been, I'm sure I'd be saying, if it were happening, I'd be like, I haven't slept very much in the last month anyway, but I think I probably would not have slept at all for the last month if we were making the circus during this, but it would have been quite a thing.
Yeah. And you're so right about the streamers. I made a documentary 3-4 years ago with HBO. They funded the whole thing, and I probably couldn't get that funding today from them.
There's a lot of things like this. And again, I'm not like trying to, I work with Left Right, the production company that made the circus, on other stuff. And, we all are talking to people at those platforms all the time. It's, I'm sympathetic in the sense that everyone knows there's this profound structural change happening in the business. There's going to be this consolidation. Some of these companies are going away, and you can say whatever you want about the way that the streamers, the content, let's call it in the classic Marxist distinction between labor and capital, in the capital side of the business. I don't have like great sympathy for capital in this fight in the ongoing fight with the Screen Actors and the Writers Guild and so on, from the strike last year. But they all they made a deal, and they don't really know, like with AI and the consolidation, they don't really understand what the economics of the business are going to be like 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. So everyone is and then you have some companies that are massively in debt. So it's like all of that together, whatever you want to say about the causes of it, who's responsible, who's to blame, they're all like a very, very well-known executive of a company that made a ton of insanely great programming over the course of the 90s and the aughts said to me the other day that like the characteristic posture of people who greenlight projects right now at all of the streaming companies is, we're not doing video, but is like being at your desk they're holding onto the edge of their desk and they're afraid, they're like quaking as if to like, they're like all terrified that they're going to make the wrong decision. And right now it's like, you literally hear things from some of these companies that's like, if you think an idea that you have is too obvious, too broad, and too dumb for X company, that's the show we want right now. Like, or like bring us your broadest, your dumbest, your most mass appeal, lowest common denominator stuff. That's the stuff we want to back right now, because
especially if there's crime involved.
Because we're super risk averse, crime involved. Obviously live sports right now, they're all obsessed with that. Crime related, obviously celebrity related. If you can get access to some big celebrity and lock them in, but it's like no one's like, hey, it's not even niche. Anything that sounds interesting, it's like, that's probably important. And none of them, again, not to sound too like,
highbrow.
Was it? Yeah, or too kind of scoldish about this, but like none of these companies, whatever you want to say about ABC, CBS, NBC in the golden age of television, right? They all thought they were a public trust, that they wanted to make money, but they started news divisions because they believed that the airways were scarce. They were regulated in certain ways. And they were like, okay, in order to make all the money we're going to make, we also have to give something back. We have to give back this notion of like news divisions that cover the news. Again, no disrespect to any of these people, but Apple, Amazon, Netflix, all of them, none of them think of themselves that way. They think they're entertainment companies. They're not like, we don't have a responsibility to do something that's not maximally profitable. Our job is to maximize shareholder value. That's the way they see it. And that just means they are the dominant platforms for information going forward, and they don't feel like they're public trusts. And so, I mean, I do slightly worry for we know what's happening. We know what's happening. The broadcast news and cable news are on a long-term secular decline to irrelevance. You know how long that takes. But these are the new platforms that we're all going to watch stuff on, and none of them have it in their DNA to say we have an obligation to give something back to the public. And I think that's a worrying long-term trend.
It's a really great point, but it's also a great segue into my next question, which is about Hat Size 3 Productions, which is your relatively new company where you are going to be producing meaningful and important content.
Well, stay tuned. Let's hope. Yeah. I basically, after the Circus ended, the guys at Left Right, Banks Tarver, who's one of the founders there and had made the Circus with us for all these years, we had been, for most of the time that we were making the Circus, I would have ideas about things that I wanted to try to develop, and I just didn't have time. I mean, it's like I literally was bandwidth constrained. For a period of that time, I was also running the Recount and doing MSNBC, and I got to the place where, Andy, you may have this same problem in your life. I have been trying for a while to either crack the space-time continuum and add hours to the day, or to figure out the cloning thing. Because if there were two of me, I could do some damage with if there were two of me, probably I mean literally damage. But I just didn't have time. And then the combination of, we sold the Recount and the Circus came to an end, and I had more, I actually had some bandwidth and some running room. And so Hat Size 3 is literally just was the personal like little loan out company that I had for myself. And then I thought, well, let's start doing this development stuff on in a more rigorous, systematized way. So I partnered with Left Right, and so we have like a little pod inside Left Right to develop stuff that's hopefully will be good and interesting. And I don't have any news on that front right now. It's been like it's really, really pretty new. It's less than a year that we've been doing this, and we started doing it in the middle of the strike. So it was sort of like bad in the sense that there wasn't really a market to buy anything, but good in the sense that it gave us time to kind of to do what development really is, which is to try to get not just to like throw dumb ideas over the transom, but to kind of spend time doing actual research and working and trying to figure out things that to develop relationships and some deep knowledge about ideas and subjects that we want or might be interested in seeing some show some form about. So hopefully, knocking wood all over the place. Hopefully, in the next year, some of the things we've been working on will make their way out into the world. And there are some of those things are political, and some of them are really not political. They're much more in the space of sports and in the space of culture and other places that hopefully they're all things people will go, oh, that's smart, that's interesting, I'd like to watch that. Some of them I'm pretty confident about, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, there's a lot more to this life than politics, they say, right? So
totally,
good luck with that.
There really is.
And for the record, with regard to cloning, I've been told by more than one person in my life that one of me is enough. So
well,
we're going to leave it at that.
I would never subject anybody to two of me. I would keep one of them. I would keep one of me just like in a relatively dark room, just doing all the work that I don't have time for. I have the public me and the private me. There'd be the me who is like the work slave, enslaved to me by me.
You just teed me up again on private life before we head to politics. You've got a Great Dane, right?
I do.
And you live in Manhattan, which means either you have a really dope apartment or a really pissed off Great Dane.
Well, here's the thing: is my apartment's pretty great. I like it. I've had at some point at one point I had two, and it's one of the great misunderstandings about Great Danes is that they're awesome apartment dogs, and they're not. Great Danes basically at the age of 2. Which is when they basically transition from a puppy adolescent, not adult, to adult, and once they hit 2, they just become the laziest sacks of shit you can imagine. They just all they want to do is sit around and on the couch all day and watch TV, and they're like
Welcome
camels
to the club.
also, right? Like people are used to their dogs. Having to, oh, how often do you have to take dog out? I'm like, the Danes want to go out when they're adults twice a day. It's like they go downstairs in the morning. They want to go downstairs like what? Like they're not like that. They're like, hey, they can go hours and hours without having to pee. And so it's like I know people have like Vizslas, or anything in the terrier category. These dogs run around the house like crazy. They're like if you don't take them out 5 times a day, they have so much energy that it doesn't matter how big your apartment is, they fill the apartment up. My dog, will like sleep 8 hours, get up, go outside, do its business, come back up, eat breakfast, and crash for 6 hours. That's like, so it's like it's nice to have a nice apartment, but Danes actually take up remarkably little space.
They'd be happy in a
studio
apartment.
They are seriously, man. The dog, if you give the dog a couch, he's like, I'm fine, couch and a TV. But they're great. They're great city dogs. And when you take them around, I live in Soho. When you take them out, I have only one right now. It used to be Dizza is the dog I have. His older brother who passed away a couple of years ago is Fife. And when I used to walk those two dogs through downtown New York, it was like 300 pounds of dog, and they were both super handsome. And people just go, whoa! Like there's a kind of like it's Great Danes and Basset Hounds are the ones that like if you take them around, everyone flips out. I don't know why, but like there's just kind of like, oh my God, look at that dog. Anyway, he's good looking, he's really sweet, and I love them. I will be a Great Dane owner for life. They're like they're something special.
Well, I'm in Tribeca, so I'll have to walk over with Ringo, my amazing dog, and make friends.
What breed is that dog, man?
I was told he was a Border Collie and Golden Retriever, and I got a DNA test, and he's neither of those things. So he's actually Pit Bull and Chow Chow, but looks like neither of those.
I swear, everyone I know who's ever had a genetic test for their dog, because if you decide to do a rescue situation, which I just adore. It's weird because Danes are tricky with rescues if you want to get those dogs, but like as a general matter, the idea of doing rescues seems to me like the adopt don't shop thing is a good motto to live by. Everyone I know who has a mutt of some form has gone. Not everyone has gone to get the DNA test, but everyone who has always comes back, and the dogs are always at least 40% pit.
Right.
And there's always a lot of chow. It's like pits and chows are out there like doing the nasty all over the place, because every dog that's not a purebred dog has a ton of pit and a ton of chow in them. I'd say you're like, I don't necessarily look like that, but okay, sure,
Yeah, we were surprised.
Awesome.
We were totally surprised. All right,
Ringo.
let's Ringo. And when I walk Ringo and they say, what's his name? I go, Ringo. And they go, oh, named after the drummer? I'm like, Is there another Ringo? Like they want to be
It's like,
friends, but they often ask really dumb questions.
Yes. Oh, your dog's named Mahatma Gandhi. Is that named after the sort of secular saint leader of the nation of India?
No, it's my uncle. My uncle Mahatma.
Yeah, my uncle. Oh, yeah, the uncle named Mahatma Gandhi. Yeah,
All right, so let's pivot here. It's been not even 2 months. We've seen Trump become a convicted felon. President Joe Biden had a disastrous debate performance, followed by 3 weeks of intense Democratic infighting, an assassination attempt on Trump, Biden quitting.
Don't forget the Republican convention.
I'm getting there.
If you're going sequentially, you got the assassination attempt, then the Republican convention, and the selection of J.D. Vance.
We have J.D. Vance. We had Kid Rock and what's his name, Hulk Hogan, and the weirdo from the UFC. Then we had Biden quit, Kamala Harris. This really does give new meaning to the phrase, anything can and will happen in politics, right?
It's like one of the things you should have learned from the Trump era has been that not only that predictions are tricky, but that like settled assumptions are tricky. Like if you sort of make like, well, on the basis of all the things that we know, this can't happen. That thing will then happen, or this is definitely going to happen. That thing then doesn't happen. It's almost like the man plans, God laughs thing is like sort of like in this era is just like reliably whatever you are convinced of either it will happen or won't happen. You can pretty much bet that the opposite thing is going to take place. We did in the last episode of the Circus. I did the last interview of the last episode of the Circus was with James Carville, and that I sat down with James and he said this thing that at the time, given the backdrop of what I just said about the unpredictability of this era, struck me as right. I mean, James basically said, we've got 2.5 years of polling now that suggests that the country hates this race that we're in. Like the country does not want Trump and Biden. They don't. They're like, people are just not into that, And there's an incredible lack of enthusiasm among on both sides. Trump's very small base, and there's they're enthused. But even in the Republican Party, which we think of as being like an overall MAGA cult, and I saw this in the primary, you go around, people were not, a third of the party was really into Trump, a quarter, but a lot of Republicans had the attitude, which was, I hate fucking Joe Biden, but I'd rather not have Trump. But Trump was obviously, I don't want to fight this because this is where it's going to go. And obviously on the Democratic side, I ran into people like that all the time, Biden, for 2 years. And, I would travel on the country, and the main thing that I would hear from people was, is this really the best we can do? Like these two, an octogenarian, a late 70s, these guys, 350 million people in the country. This is like what we got, a rerun of these old dudes. And James said, I'm not going to predict for you how or why or what, but I just don't think this is sustainable. A race for 3/4 of the country doesn't want it. Something's going to happen, and we're going to look up and we're going to say, he's like, 6 months from now, something's going to happen. We're all going to look up and say, holy shit, I didn't see that coming. He's just like, the Herb Stein from Nixon Economist, who said, that which is unsustainable will not sustain. And James's version of that, that which can't go on won't. It's like that something would happen, right? And it was a little bit kind of oracular and kind of gnomic to say, something will change, but I don't know what. But like, I thought at the time it intuitively felt right to me that somehow like, it just didn't seem, he's like, you really think Trump and Biden, that rematch is going to be what we're going to have when we get to November 2024? I don't know. I just don't feel it. And so in some ways like that has stuck in my head, the whole time, and so no one predicted, the debate will happen and then the following things will happen. But yes, I mean, I've been doing this 35 years. I've never seen a series of seismic events on this scale happen in such a compressed period of time. Game changers, so to speak, right? Whereas like, it's just been like, from week to week, these giant things have happened. And I do think that resetting a race like this in a fundamental way, where in a weird way, all the things that came before that led to where we are now has created the now, which is to say, Democratic enthusiasm for Kamala Harris is off the charts. If Joe Biden had stepped away in at the end of if after the 2022 midterms, if Joe Biden had said, I've now done this incredible thing. I beat Donald Trump. I beat COVID. I brought the economy back. I now gave Democrats a really solid midterm in 2022. I said I was going to be transitional. I'm now going to step away and let my party have a primary. There's no world in which I think that Vice President Harris would have swept that primary. She was not within the party, broadly speaking.
Sure.
It would have been a competitive primary. She would have been maybe the front runner, but there would have been that whole Democratic bench would have been out there. It would have been a very vigorous primary, and I don't know who would have won that primary, but it wouldn't have been like Kamala Harris by acclamation, right?
Oh, well, she
But
ran
given the
once before. It wasn't. She didn't get.
and she wasn't great.
Mhm.
And I've known her a long time, and I have a lot of respect for her. I like her, but this is not to diss her. It's just to say the level of enthusiasm and unity around her is a product of how despondent
Yep.
and how much pain there was on the Democratic side on behalf of Joe Biden, worry about the future, worry about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
The intensity of it is a function of what came before, right? And the same thing in the Trump world, where, they really had no contingency plan. We used to talk about, well, what if Democrats, they used to publicly say, well, Democrats will never let, Trump for a past couple of years has been saying that Biden wouldn't end up being the nominee. He'd been saying that, but not believing it. And they engineered an entire campaign around the notion that this was the guy that they could run this play, strong versus weak. And that Biden everything he did kept falling further into that framework, which is, the debate was really the ultimate. It's beyond whatever you think about his performance in it and what it said about the future. The frame they built, which was he's old, useless, weak, can barely get a sentence out of his head. That was what they built a whole campaign around that, and he reinforced that frame. And then the thing that was actually unthinkable to them, which was Democrats actually did this highly rational thing at the end, was like, oh, we're going to lose with this guy. We need to change, even though it's at the last minute. And even though it's risky, we're just going to do it. And the Trump campaign is so right now, what's the bumfuzzled, befuddled, befogged, and they have no play. I mean, and the ultimate example of that, and the ultimate proof of that is J.D. Vance, who is a pick made on the basis of, I don't think vice presidential picks matter. I don't think J.D. Vance is going to matter to what Donald Trump does or doesn't do, whether he wins or who loses in November. But just as a sign, there's no more sign of abject arrogance, overconfidence, hubris than that pick.
Hubris,
because
for sure.
It's the pick of they, you saw the Tim Alberta thing. They were like, they thought they were on their way to a 320 vote electoral landslide before the debate. By the time you got to Ohio, to the convention in Milwaukee, they were thinking about 350, 360. They were like, we could and I remember hearing Chris LaCivita, Susie Wiles, Tony Fabrizio starting to talk about, we are going to bring in a fundamental realignment of American politics. That's the level of a landslide that we're going to bring. Man, I'll tell you, I remember back when Karl Rove used to talk about a 50-year Republican majority. And, when strategists start to talk about fundamentally realigning the American electorate, that's when you go, oh, hi, may I introduce you, Mr. LaCivita and a gentleman named Icarus. It's like, you guys you huffed a little too much of your own glue. And the J.D. Vance pick is that pick. It was like, we don't need to think about anything else. I'm thinking about an heir to my legacy who will become the guy who carries the MAGA banner forward into the new American MAGA future. It's like, oh boy, you guys are just like inviting. That is hubris on a grand scale. So now they're stuck with him, and they don't have a plan for Harris. And they look, she is having. This is the best moment of her campaign right now. It's not to say anything negative about her to say this. She's in her honeymoon on steroids period. And it's not just that the party loves her, but that the other side is now totally confused and doesn't know what to do, and they're flailing, right? The Trump side, the MAGA side, will get its shit together, and she will take some knocks. And so the things will revert to the mean. This will be a very close race, I think. But it really I've never seen a reset like this before, at this late. at this late stage. So yes,
Sure.
to go back to your point, Andy, yeah, the next 3 months are going to be, I mean, we are totally in uncharted water.
Yeah.
And it's going to be quite something to watch.
And, your book, Game Change, you referenced that this is a game-changing moment. You teed up for me again. Talk about James Carville. The mood of Democrats has swung wildly. In 1 week, Democrats went from panic and despair to downright euphoria. So Carville, he's warned that, quote, that excitement has to be tempered with realism. And he also said, quote, enjoy yourself, feel good. But there's tough sledding ahead, he said. But then even more so, he said, quote, if this was a play, it'd be called The Ice Pick Cometh. Get ready, they're coming for us. Is he being a little bit of a Debbie Downer, or is he being prescient again? And, this is going to be a bloodbath with these guys.
I mean, look, I don't fuck with James. James is like, I think that people who are, I think James's attitude is like, if you should go into, a knife fight with a knife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you should go, do people really want to know that there's a guy with a truncheon, around the corner, but they'll be like, oh, don't tell me about the guy with a truncheon. I'll just take my chances. It's like, I think people are like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
People used to get mad at me when I would do interviews on the Circus with Steve Bannon. And I was always like, guys, like, I'm not platforming the guy. I'm going to ask him hard questions, but more importantly, like, you have a choice here. Either let those guys operate in the shadows or throw some light on them. I don't know if I'm a partisan Democrat, I would rather know what the guy's doing than have him off skulking around in the dark. And I think James is trying to throw some light on what's to come. There's reasons why people were nervous about Kamala Harris as a nominee, not anything to do with, well, some people have various reasons, but one of them was, people who've seen what Trump's America was like for 4 years, and those forces and the impulses that Trump drew upon to win in 2016 and to govern the way he governed and to let loose some of these worst angels of the national character out in the world. You look at it's inspiring to see for a lot of us to see a non-white woman potentially as president. Mm-hmm. For a bunch of other people, it's not inspiring at all. And so that what that means is, the Southern strategy, on steroids, and there's going to be, of course, there's going to be ugly, vicious, demonizing, racist, misogynist attacks. Some of them above the waterline. Some of them really deep below the surface. If everybody takes seriously the notion that the right-wing echo chamber and the right-wing media sphere and the coordinated way in which all of the governmental, political, and free agent parts of that world have in the past worked with kind of devilish orchestration and synchronicity to accomplish their ends, you have got to understand that this woman is going to be fed through a meat grinder over the course of the next few months. I don't mean that she won't survive, and I don't mean that there's not a countervailing set of forces. I just mean, like, don't walk into this thinking she's going to now. I got to say, like, the Democrats and social media, they're not very few of them who live in the real world. We're like, it's going to be a landslide. I'm like, it's not going to be a landslide for her. It's not. You sound like you're as high on your own supply as the Trump people who thought J.D. Vance was a good idea.
Right.
This is not a country where landslides happen. It's just the combination of the electoral college is designed.
Half the country's in a cult.
Well, and the electoral college is designed to give Republicans an advantage, and you can win by 8 million votes and still only win the popular vote and still only win the electoral college by 50, 60, 70,000. And we have a very polarized country. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think that she is going to be, I think this is a little bit of very conventional wisdom, but she's going through I won't say the worst period, but the very intense period right now in which the right is trying to, at a moment when Kamala Harris is still not super well defined in the public mind, and people in the country, I hate to tell everybody, they don't really know very much about the vice president of the United States ever. Mm-hmm. They didn't really pay that much attention to Joe Biden when he was vice president, or Mike Pence, or Dick Cheney, or Al Gore. a vice president getting rolled out is something that if you have months and months to do it, you make the case to people who are very low information about who this person is and tell them about their accomplishments and how they helped the president in the course of the time they were in office. Most people in the country don't know who she is. And so there's this definitional battle right now where in this 4-week period, the right is trying to define her in the worst possible ways, which is why we've seen this flood. I would say that it's a lack of coordination and focus because of the thing I said before about how little they don't really know how to go after her. So you're hearing they're just throwing the kitchen sink at her right now. But it's intense right now, and they're trying to get it done before she gets to the convention where she's going to have the stage for 4 days, where Democrats will put on that will be their formal place to introduce her / reintroduce her to the country. But I don't think that anybody should be under an illusion that like if they haven't destroyed her in 4 weeks, that they're going to give up on the other side of the convention, that we're not going to see 2 months. Right. The Trump campaign and its super PACs and affiliated groups are going to be very well funded. And as I said, above the waterline, below the sub rosa and above the waterline, the attacks are going to be vicious. And the country has, there are reasons why the Southern strategy has prevailed in the Republican Party for a long time, because I don't believe the country is majority racist. I don't believe the country is majority.
Well, that's a good point, because I was going to say, like, when I take my liberal empath hat off and I put on my political hat, I say, okay, the attacks are going to be brutal. They will be sexist. They will be racist. They're going to be ugly as shit. Yep. But maybe with the moderate Republicans, with independents, with suburban women, with suburban moms, that shit's not going to play well, is it?
I agree. Look, people, it's so weird to be like, I'm trying to be a realist, but I also am enough of a realistic optimist and I don't think it's I think it's like rose-colored glasses to remind people that we did elect a black president in both of our lifetimes, Andy. I mean, amazingly, some people thought it would never happen, but we had a guy who got elected in 2008, 2012. As usual, the actual utopian Panglossians were like, oh, racism is gone in America. We have a black president now. You're like, no, the country's really big and really complicated. It can be a bunch of things at the same time. There was a backlash to Obama, but I still think the majority that elected Barack Obama comfortably in 2012 and by a landslide in 2008, that majority is still there. And some of the people there are some people who aren't racist, some people who probably are like a little racist, but don't want to be, and are like trying to be, who don't think of themselves that way. And that's the combination of people who are proud to put Barack Obama in the White House in 2 consecutive terms. Also, the country, to the extent it's changed over the last decade, is, some bunch of voters have died and a bunch of new voters have come into the cohort, right? And the Gen Z people, on the basis of all we can see, every new generation is less racist, is less homophobic, is more. That's, again, it's not, there's still, young racists out there and young homophobes out there, but they are, broadly speaking, Gen Z does not have an appetite for kind of overt and even subtle racism. So there's an opportunity. This is why the Biden thing of not getting young voters enthused was such a problem, because those voters are by nature inclined, at least in social areas, to be progressive and to be open-minded about matters of social and cultural areas in policy and in just how they live their lives. And so is there a non-misogynist, non-racist majority in America to be tapped to win, especially when you combine it with the number of people who just fucking hate Trump, even some of the people who are sort of racist, sort of misogynist, who look at Trump and go, he's just too far. Those are the people in Cobb County, Georgia, who, like, Trump lost not because Georgia turned blue or even purple, but there were a bunch of country club Republicans in Georgia who were like, yeah, I'm a Brian Kemp Republican, but Donald Trump is a pig. I don't want any part of that, right? Yeah. You put all that together, there's a stable Democratic non-Trump majority in the country. And so I think that the optimism that Kamala Harris will be able to get through the most virulent racist, sexist parts of this, I think that's well placed. And I have never referred to Kevin McCarthy as a wise man before, but he was on Meet the Press Now the other day saying that he thought, that the DEI attacks on her were, Kevin McCarthy would never say immoral or unethical, but he did basically say it was not, it was a matter of efficacy. It's like, these aren't going to work.
Right.
That's not going to work on her. She's the vice president of the United States. People don't think she got there through some favorites, through some quota system or something, some misguided attempted affirmative action. And he also said that he thought that these other stupid ass Republican view, which is there was a cover up if Biden isn't fit to campaign, he's not fit to serve, that was also stupid.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for her is going to be this. Is actually the place where I think, and I don't want to give them advice, but they're already finding their way to it. It's not that hard to see. Joe Biden was a 38%. There are two different problems for Biden. One problem for Biden was a majority of the country, a vast majority, and a decent sized majority of the Democratic Party thought for the last 3 years he was too old to do a second term. That is a fact. It was clear in the polling for years. Starting in October of 2021, more than half of Democrats were saying they thought he was too old to be president. Okay, so that's a fact. The other thing is he's got a 38% approval rating that doesn't have anything to do with his age. And again, this is where the contest is going to take place. That putting aside why people think this, he's unpopular because of concerns about things like inflation and immigration and crime. Again, we could spend a lot of time talking about why those fears are misplaced or why he doesn't deserve the blame or whatever. Those are reasons why Joe Biden was unpopular. And what is fair is that if Kamala Harris wants to say, I have these accomplishments as part of the Biden administration, she owns those. She gets to take credit for those. Right? But they are also going to say, well, you were there for these 3 years. You have to own the parts of Biden's record that are unpopular. And so then the question is going to be an argument over how to define those. How do you try to make the economy not diffuse the inflation thing and point to the better parts of the economic record, have some more empathy in the economic area. On the immigration, make the argument that we passed a great border security bill and then Trump killed it. Those are all, but that's, to me, if I'm in Harris world, and I can tell you that I know that this is the case in Harris world, what they worry about is that there's a whole bunch of defense to do on the front of race, gender, all those attacks. But where they're actually vulnerable is on these matters that made Biden unpopular. And how do they defend on those fronts and try to win on that case? And I think there's going to be, the immigration thing is going to be very hot because it kind of sits at the core of a policy issue that also has all these racial components.
They've also defined her as the immigration czar, which is totally bogus, and but that's what they do.
Yes. So that's I think that's if you look at that I think this is a winnable race for I have always thought that this race is going to be a close race. It's going to be a margin of error race till the end. It's not impossible that if a really well-run Harris campaign, given how bad Trump is, and you see him now backpedaling from doing a debate with her, he knows he's going to get ripped up if he has to debate her.
Well, I think
a well-run Harris campaign can win. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say that I think her being a litigator, her being a former prosecutor, district attorney, attorney general, I think to the points you're making, I think those strengths, those assets are really going to benefit her. She should, better than most people perhaps, be able to present the closing argument as if she was in a courtroom, convincingly, hopefully.
I think that's right. She's, as I said, I've known her for a long time. I met her in 1999, I think, when she was in City Hall in San Francisco, and I was living there. And I met her as in I started covering her in some ways then. And the thing that people, I guess, the prosecutor part of her, she is, at heart a lawyer, and she plays that part well, and it's really core to who she is. I don't mean plays that part as in fakes it, but I mean, she inhabits that role as we all inhabit our various roles. I think that, when she ran for president, one of the fundamental confusions or difficulties that her campaign never was able to kind of untangle was that her authentic self was, I'm a prosecutor, and she was running in a Democratic primary that was more progressive than she is. And so they did not think I'm a prosecutor was a way to beat Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren.
Sure.
And so they were wrapped around the axle of like, what should she be? What part of her personality and her public image did they want to emphasize? They never figured it out. And the most natural, authentic part of her is this prosecutor part. And they felt uncomfortable in the Democratic Party in the era of, defund the police and all the rest of it. This is pre-George Floyd, but still defund the police was the thing that was already happening then.
Mm-hmm.
She just didn't feel very comfortable in that space. She doesn't have to worry about that now. She needs to be her authentic self, to be her best self. But also, she's running in a general election against a fucking felon, right? And so no one in the Democratic Party is going to be like, oh, don't lean into your prosecutorial credentials, ma'am. Defund the DA. It's like, that's not the issue here, right? She's going to be able to lean into that and not have to be thinking about, worried about that. She has the whole Democratic Party behind her, and everyone will embrace this notion of her prosecuting Donald Trump. And I think that massively works to her advantage. A place where you can be your authentic self and know that there's not any trap doors out there for you on that front is a massive advantage against Trump. Massive.
Yeah. Well, it's very Shakespearean. It's like the prosecutor, the convicted felon. This is not an election. It's a courtroom. It's a trial. Like it really is kind of Hollywood in a sense. But in our final couple of minutes, let me know if you want to handicap the VP job. Who does she pick? What makes most sense for her?
Well, I hate predictions. Well, here's what I'll say. I also hate the beepstakes as a general thing, because it's like at some point that we're going to know. Who fucking cares? Like what anybody has to say in advance. I would say this though. This is a little different, because unlike a normal beepstakes, I want to be clear. I don't think that who she picks, that there's zero evidence that who you pick gets you votes. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to get a demographic or a state or this or that. The vice presidential selection always matters in only one way. But in this case, that way is amplified. And the way it matters is it says something about who you are. You are making a choice that is a reflection of your values and your personality. And first and most importantly, this is like the thing that gets you 95% of the way there. If you pick someone who is ready to be president from day one and is perceived as being ready to be president from day one, you are 97% of the way to winning the game. Vice presidential picks can hurt you. And the way they hurt you is that if you make an irresponsible pick, you get hammered, and that makes people think less of you. This is like why ultimately Palin was a bad pick for McCain. Cynical, not ready to be president. People looked at her and were like, that person can't be president. And in the end, although she gave him a boost with the base for a couple weeks, in the end, she was a drag on him. You pick Dan Quayle. You pick someone who the filter looks at and says, that person's not ready to be president. You have a problem. And it consumes media cycles, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing is, for reasons of both, this is a place where politics and substance merge perfectly. It's the right thing to do for the country, and it's the right thing to do for your politics, to pick someone who immediately clears the bar, where everybody goes, okay, that person can be president. We're moving on. And then there's a thing about what does it project about what you think you could gain as a governing partner. Like, you're sort of saying something about acknowledging that you're no one is the complete package, and that I could benefit in some way from having this person at my side. Obama picks Biden, and as a kind of tacit thing and Bush picks Cheney as a kind of tacit thing of, I don't have that much foreign policy experience. It would be good for me to have a gray head who knows foreign policy at my side. That's like, we admire that kind of an admission that you could gain from somebody who has more of something than you do, right? I think, the notions that, a lot of people like Mark Kelly in this position, for all these narrow political reasons. He's from Arizona, and but I think there's a sense of national security. His background in the military, he obviously would bring Gabby Giffords along as part of a package deal there, would highlight an issue the Democrats care about. So I think he's perfectly plausible. I think Josh Shapiro is perfectly plausible. These names are thrown around, but somebody said to me the other day that there's like politics picks, and there's kind of like there's kind of picks of kind of imagination where it's like, and like when Clinton picked Gore, it was like defied everybody's ideas of like what you should do. Like he's not balancing the ticket. He should have picked an older guy. He should have picked a guy from a different part of the country. He picked another guy who's basically his age from the same part of the country. That's crazy.
Right.
And instead, you got all this generational mojo. People were like, look at those guys. Look at those two families up there. They're both, they're like, this is a new generation that's coming, right? That was an imaginative pick, right? And in that realm, it's like, if the best political athlete of all these people are being concerned right now, just the best athlete who's on the list, on anybody's list right now, is Pete Buttigieg. I mean, he's the best performer, incredibly smart. I mean, like no one, and again, to bet on the notion that that America's ready, I think too much change for a lot of Americans would be to put another woman on the ticket. I think that would be too much change for the part of the electorate that's going to decide the election. That would be like a little scary for people. I'm not endorsing that. I'm telling you, I think many people would say in the 7% that's undecided right now, you would be asking them to absorb a lot of change. A non-white woman at the top of the ticket, another woman on the ticket. People would be like, that feels a little risky.
Or in the age of Dobbs and choice and bodily autonomy, that could be the imaginative ticket that you're talking about.
It would
time
be
for women,
right?
right?
So it would be an imaginative pick. And again, again, it's not up to me to get behind it. I could see the logic for it for what you say. That's the all Dobbs ticket. That's the Gretchen Whitmer ticket. She's incredibly impressive.
Sure. And Michigan. Can't win without Michigan.
I would not I want to be clear. When I say that I think there will be those who would say to her, to Kamala Harris, would say to her, hey, we're talking about a small slice of the electorate here that at this point is still undecided about Donald Trump.
Sure. No, I totally
Who's
agree.
Undecided? Who's undecided about Donald Trump out there? There's a risk here.
Sure,
Here's what the risk is.
We're turned off by that for sure.
And the reward is, as you said, Andy, the reward would be we go all in on Dobbs. Right. I think, the reason I say this about Pete is, and again, I don't have a dog in this fight. I really don't. But on the Pete side, there'll be people who say, well, that's too much change too. He's gay. He's out gay. Again, but it's the imaginative choice. To your point, that bucket there's that bucket over there, which is the Gretchen Whitmer, Pete Buttigieg bucket, which is kind of like doubling down on something, doubling down on it is a new generation. It is a new time. This is a new America. Let's make that optimistic bet. I don't give advice, and I think all of these picks have certain upsides and certain downsides. I can see how you build a case around, at this moment, boldness as opposed to something that feels narrow and political, where it's like, you pick this person you barely knew because they might be able to help you in Pennsylvania. And again, I think Josh Shapiro's great, whatever. I mean, he could be president one day. It will feel very much like, wow, she was really trying to get Pennsylvania. I think that the conversation you want is not, he helped her in a state he needs. He helped her in a state she needs. I think the conversation you want is, man, she has just grabbed the reins of this thing and is making a pick that's like, that without going crazy, that's within the bounds of like, that feels imaginative and bold. And I would say that's even true of someone like Admiral McBraven. No one's talking about the guy, but you want national security? He's like, he's not really in the conversation right now, but is the most highly decorated public Democrat in the ex-military out there, would convey a certain kind of, hey, I know that I need some help. I know that it's a dangerous world and I need somebody who really can help bolster me on national security. Again, I say, I think bold right now is in some ways better than cautious.
Yeah, well, it's going to be real interesting, and there's so many great choices, and we're going to find out, I guess, in like a week or two.
I'll tell you what I will do is it's going to, one way or the other, the whole thing is going to highlight just the depth of the Democratic bench. And so one thing to say about the
that's
Democratic
clear,
Party right now,
clear.
The Democratic bench is deep with talent, and it will be, if you're a Democrat, you will be, now that you've moved on to this new nominee, presumptive nominee, you're going to be psyched to see the Democratic bench on full display in Chicago, because they're going to be able to say, hey, we have a lot of players here that are going to be a big deal in the future.
Are you saying that Taylor Swift and Beyonce might be a little more exciting than
Lee Greenwood?
Lee? Oh my God! Yeah. And if you actually listen, if you listen to the lyrics of that song, they have nothing to do with Trump. Not one line of the lyrics. Not one. Anyway, my last question, it's not a political question. It's a window into the soul question, and music is the best window into one's soul that we can get. So give me your top 5 musical artists of all time.
This is a question I can't answer. I was a refused to answer. It's just like I'm not being it's just I don't even really think about the world that way. I have a massive and eclectic set of musicians that I adore.
All right, give us 5 artists that you love listening to.
Here's a partial answer. I went last night to the 150th and final show of Billy Joel's residency at Madison Square Garden. I've never been to a Billy Joel show before, so I'm not like I grew up with Billy Joel, but I had never gone to see Billy Joel before. I respect the guy. The show was great. It's great. There's something about the way he does what he does that I've rarely seen a crowd more. I mean, it was a joyous night. President Clinton was there. The mayor was there. Andrew Cuomo was there. The Madison Square Garden was as full as it could be. It was a real thing last night because he's 150 sold out shows. 150 sold out Madison Square Garden, 150 times. And when I was a kid, I said to somebody who was in his entourage last night, they were like, "Have you never seen Billy before? Have you ever seen Billy before?" I said, "No." I said, "Look, man, when this guy was big, I was listening to The Clash. I was like, Billy Joel seemed really soft to me when I was 18, 25, And now I appreciate his gifts as a songwriter more than I did then. And I really appreciate his unself-consciousness and how much fun he had doing the way he is on stage is just so unself-conscious. And the crowd was just absolutely having the best time of almost any show I've ever seen in Madison Square Garden. Do I love Taylor Swift? I think Taylor Swift incredible. People know that, I mean, incredible. I think she's the heir to Springsteen. I think she's one of the great pop songwriters in, really ever, and certainly of her era. I saw Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders, down in Red Bank, New Jersey, on the night that Trump got shot. In fact, and she's in her now, I think early 70s and she's very late 60s, early 70s. She might be 72. She's fucking just shreds still at that age. People know that I have this affiliation with, and long relationship with and love for, Wu-Tang Clan. But, my hip hop, loves are all over the place. My, the Beastie Boys and Run DMC and Tribe Called Quest and, I could name 10 hip hop groups that I can't live without. This is why I can't answer the question of 5 greatest. Would I put Tribe Called Quest over the Beatles? Or they belong on the same list? I don't know. I love the Beatles. I'll tell you here. This is the last thing I'll do for this. Just this will make use. Here are the shows. This is a window into the soul. Okay, in my calendar, here are shows that I am. I was up at the Apollo Theater last Friday night. This is not a music show, but I went up and saw this Snap show that Dave Chappelle and Jon Stewart threw up at the Apollo. That was awesome. I was at Billy Joel last night. On Monday, Beck is playing at Carnegie Hall. I'm gonna go check that out. I've got what all is in this?
Kid Rock.
What else do we have? Things go a little crazy in the fall. So it's like in the fall, here are a bunch of things that are on my list. PJ Harvey, Bikini Kill, Pearl Jam up at Fenway, Jesus and Mary Chain, Cat Power, Vampire Weekend. That's like September. Jason Isbell at the Ryman. Maggie Rogers is a friend. The is coming doing a revival tour at the Beacon. Air is playing at the Beacon. Waxahachie. I'm all over the place,
okay.
dude.
You gave us a window into the soul for sure.
Yes, I can't give you. I don't like to. I wouldn't want to do top fives, but I'll tell you. I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting up to see this. Jason Isbell does a week at the Ryman every year in Nashville that I have never been able to get to previously. I'm really hoping this fall I'll be able to get to that. Although the presidential campaign may keep me from doing it, and I am not going to let anybody stop me from seeing Pearl Jam at Penn.
No, and I was going to say I am going to see Pearl Jam. They're going to be here in the city in September, and I can't wait for that. I can't believe I've never seen them before.
I have seen them, but you can never go wrong seeing them again. And I loved hearing Eddie's got a version of the English Beat song "Save It for Later" on the Bear season 3 soundtrack. That's just really incredible. So if you haven't heard that, you should go check it out.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if you're a Beatles fan, but I just interviewed Pete Best last week.
Pete Best.
It was amazing. I had goosebumps the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I got to go back. Has that dropped already?
It dropped like 3 days ago. It's an hour with Pete Best. And I asked him who the better drummer is, Pete Best or Ringo. You can listen.
What do you say?
You can find out. I won't spoil it.
I mean,
go.
It would be.
You probably know what his answer was.
Well, all I'll say is that it would be a very, very large, bold answer to say I'm better than Ringo Starr. But
I'm not saying a thing. I'm not going to say.
I'm not saying. Well, okay. I'll go. I'm going to check it out. I got to listen to that podcast.
All right, John. It was a lot of fun. We could probably do this for 2 more hours, in my opinion. You'll have to come back as these next 3 months unfold in the cray way that they're probably going to. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime, bro.
All right.
Anytime. Happy to see you.
All right, it is time for yet another episode of Just Jeff. Hey, Jeff, welcome back into the back room. What's going on?
All right, yeah, I'm ready to go.
You energized? You're excited? Are you enthused?
Yes, I am. I'm enthused about a lot of things, but especially the new candidate who the opponent feels is going to be only temporary because he's going to beat her in the polls, and the Democrats are then going to pick a replacement for her. I think he's wishful thinking.
This is fascinating watching you eat and drink.
Yeah, I can do it. I can eat, drink, and breathe at the same time. I'm multi-talented.
So, tell me in a nutshell, why are you so excited and enthused about the new candidate?
Well, she knows what she's talking about. And I think the most important thing is that assuming they do have another debate, I wouldn't guarantee that, she will be able to tell him that he's full of, what? Am I allowed to say that on the show? Yes. That he's just a bullshitter, which he knows that. And most Dems know that, but I don't know if everyone else knows that.
There you go. All right. And have you been listening to the podcast? Anything that comes to mind?
I just went to the one that was with the 2 women from Seneca. So, Andy, you said something during the warm-up to that, with the 3 of you talking. You said that you would vote for a shoe rather than vote for Trump. And my position, I don't know if you know about, there was once a vice president who said the vice presidency isn't worth a bucket of warm spit. That was John Nance Garner in the first 2 terms of FDR. However, he never said warm spit. He said a bucket of warm spit. He said it's a bucket of warm something else that rhymes with spit. But it was, of course. Anyway.
All right. Well, any parting thoughts on anything?
Oh, well, yes. There's one thing. Please, Andy, do not do this again. I know it was very valid. You said something about it's like Jeffrey Dahmer being a vegetarian. Makes very sense. But please, just don't use the... I'm glad you said Jeffrey and not Jeff, because Jeff was very upset because that's the worst possible Jeffrey in
something
history.
You want to tell us, Jeff? All right.
Then let me just say the final thing, if I can get it in.
Sure.
So there's, what's her name? Tara said something about women will save the country, and I agree. And Jen, I don't know if did your mother send you this song about women will take charge?
Yes.
You should share it with Andy.
Will do.
Because it's my favorite rock song. In fact, it's my favorite song that was written after 1619 when all the drug and had a business.
Jeff, thanks so much. As always, we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye, Dad.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander. And our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.